The morning sun cast long shadows across the small apartment in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Devante stood before the cracked mirror, his fingers fumbling with the knot of a tie he rarely wore. The fabric felt foreign against his neck, but it wasn't just about looking sharp, it was about belonging. Did he belong? He straightened his shoulders, his reflection staring back at him with quiet determination. For years, he had clawed his way through life, fueled by dreams that seemed impossible to touch. Today, though, was different. Today, he would buy his first brand new car. The old hatchback groaned and sputtered as he drove toward the dealership, its broken air conditioning forcing him to roll down the windows. The warm breeze whipped through the cabin, carrying with it the faint scent of gasoline and hope. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white with anticipation. Every mile brought him closer to a dream, a silver sedan with sleek lines and a reputation for reliability. It wasn't flashy or extravagant, it was practical, dependable, and everything he had ever wanted. Could he picture himself behind the wheel? Oh, he could. He imagined pulling into his mother's driveway, her eyes widening in disbelief, his little sister jumping up and down with excitement. This wasn't just a car. It was freedom, proof that he had risen above the struggles of his past. As he pulled into the lot, sunlight danced off rows of polished vehicles, each gleaming under the bright sky. Devante parked near the entrance, taking a moment to soak it all in. He had spent countless nights researching, comparing prices, reading reviews. This wasn't impulse, it was intention. He knew exactly what he wanted and how much he was willing to pay. Walking into the showroom, his chest swelled with pride. The air smelled of fresh leather and possibility. His heart quickened as he approached the silver sedan, its surface reflecting the overhead lights like liquid metal. This was it. His moment. But even as hope surged within him, he couldn't shake the nagging thought, how quickly could dreams unravel? A sharp voice caught through the hum of excitement. "Can I help you with something?" The words weren't inviting, more like a challenge. Devante turned to see a man approaching, his suit expensive, his demeanor authoritative. Broad-shouldered, with graying hair slicked back, the manager exuded an air of superiority. His expression, however, was anything but welcoming. Skeptical. Calculating. As if Devante's presence required justification. "Yes," Devante replied, his tone polite yet firm. "I'm here to look at the silver sedan over there. I've done my research, and I'm ready to buy today." Confidence lined his voice, a deliberate effort to show he meant business. The manager's eyes flicked over him, assessing his modest attire, a simple button-up shirt and slacks worn thin from years of use. No smile crossed the manager's face. Instead, he raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. "That one's pretty expensive," he said coolly. "Maybe you'd be interested in something a little more, within your range." A flicker of annoyance sparked inside Devante, but he kept his composure. "I appreciate the suggestion, but I've already decided. I'm prepared to move forward with this car." The manager didn't budge. Instead, he let out a dismissive chuckle, nodding toward a cluster of older models near the entrance. "We've got some pre-owned vehicles over there that might be a better fit. A lot of people start there when they're buying their first car." Devante's stomach tightened. Was this man serious? But he refused to let the comment derail him. "Thank you, but I've already saved up for this one. I even have a pre-approval letter from my bank." He reached into his pocket, pulling out the folded paper, ready to prove his seriousness. The manager didn't glance at the letter. "Look," he said, his tone hardening, "you can't just walk in here and expect to drive off in one of our top models without knowing what you're getting into. Do you even know what the monthly payments are?" The words hit Devante like a slap, not because he didn't know, he had crunched the numbers meticulously, but because of the condescension dripping from the manager's voice. His chest tightened, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Glancing around, he noticed the sideways glances of nearby employees. Still, he kept his voice steady. "I've done all the math. I know exactly what I'm getting into, and I'm ready to move forward. All I need is for someone to assist me with the process." The manager narrowed his eyes, his posture stiffening. "You're wasting my time," he said bluntly. "I've seen this before. People come in here pretending they're ready to buy, but when it's time to talk numbers, they back out. I'm not here to play games." Devante's jaw tightened. Years of sacrifice, of skipping vacations, of funneling every spare dollar into savings, all reduced to this? Treated like a liar, a nuisance. I'm not pretending, he said firmly. I'm here to buy the car. That's it. But the manager wasn't listening. He stepped closer, his voice rising enough to catch the attention of nearby customers. Listen, kid, he said, his words cutting like a blade, you don't belong here, and I don't have time to babysit someone who doesn't understand how this works. Devontae's hands clenched at his sides. His pride and patience were being tested like never before. Little did the manager know, his actions were about to escalate this encounter into something neither of them would soon forget. The room seemed to grow quieter, tension thickening the air like a storm cloud. Devontae stood his ground, his voice firm but calm. I don't know what your problem is, but I'm here as a paying customer. If you can't handle that, maybe I should talk to someone else. The manager's face twisted with irritation, his posture stiffening as he stepped even closer. Someone else? I'm the manager here, he barked. You don't get to waltz in here and call the shots. People like you come in all the time, wasting my time, making big claims, and walking out when it's time to actually pay. The phrase people like you hung in the air like a thunderclap. Devontae felt the weight of every assumption behind those words, every layer of disrespect wrapped in that dismissive tone. His chest tightened, but he refused to let the man's hostility shake him. People like me? Devontae repeated, his voice low but laced with resolve. I've worked hard for this. I've saved every penny to make this happen, and you're standing here treating me like I don't belong, like I'm not worth your time. That's not how this works. By now, the confrontation had drawn a crowd. Customers hovered near the edges of the room, some pretending to browse while sneaking glances at the escalating situation. Employees exchanged uneasy looks but made no move to intervene. The manager sneered, waving a dismissive hand. You don't belong here, period. I'm telling you to leave before you embarrass yourself any further. Devontae's heart pounded in his chest, but he held his head high. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. I have every right to be here, just like anyone else. Those words became the breaking point. The manager's patience snapped. Without warning, he lunged forward, shoving Devontae hard in the chest. The force sent Devontae stumbling back, his heel catching on the edge of a display stand. Gasps rippled through the room, but no one moved to stop what was happening. Devontae straightened, his hands trembling, not from fear, but from anger. You just put your hands on me, he said, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. You really think you can treat people this way and get away with it? The manager wasn't done. His face twisted with rage as he threw a punch, landing squarely on Devontae's shoulder. The sound of the impact echoed through the showroom, freezing everyone in place. For a moment, Devontae stood still, his breath coming in short bursts as he processed what had just happened. He touched his shoulder, feeling the dull ache where the punch had landed. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation coursing through him. The manager stood there, arms crossed, chest puffed out, as if daring Devontae to retaliate. Get out, he snarled. I don't want to see your face here again. Devontae looked around, meeting the eyes of the onlookers. Some looked away, uncomfortable, while others watched with a mix of shock and hesitation, unsure whether to step in. But Devontae wasn't about to let himself be dragged down to the manager's level. He took a deep breath, his mind racing. Every fiber of his being wanted to fight back, to show this man he wasn't someone to be pushed around. But he knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, he turned and began walking toward the door, his head held high despite the humiliation. As he stepped outside, the cool air hit his face, a sharp contrast to the heat of his anger. He paused for a moment, looking back at the dealership. This isn't over, he murmured to himself. What the manager didn't realize was that his actions had just ignited a fire in Devontae, a fire that would turn the tables in ways no one could have anticipated.